Well, guys, today at the White House, President Trump held his first cabinet meeting. During the meeting, Elon Musk was asked to speak, and he said that without his spending cuts, America would go bankrupt. Yeah. You can tell things are bad because Elon just launched OnlyFans.gov. And you go, that's...
You think that was canned laughter back there? That people couldn't have actually been laughing at that attempt at a joke, could they? Things haven't gotten that bad in America for comedy, have they? Tell me it's not possible. Well, happy Thursday, too, and welcome back. The Washington Post continues to tremble. They're trembling in fear. You know, the head of the editorial page resigned yesterday. I think we were on the air when he resigned yesterday, and it's because the owner, the centibillionaire Democrat owner of the Washington Post, who got his, how big was that CIA contract that he got before he bought the Washington Post for half as much as the CIA was giving him? Nothing to see here. We've got a news media that doesn't notice much, do they? Remarkable stuff. But Jeff Bezos announced that he's in favor of individual liberties and free markets. And the resignations began at the Washington Post to show what just what commies they are. Commie Schweinhund, commie pig dogs. Remarkable times that we're living in the United States of America. Truly amazing stuff. And that's not all. There's a lot more. Not just the Washington Post and the shakeup there. And I want to see how many more resignations, because you can't stay there and be a leftist, right? And still maintain some sense of dignity. Maybe that's not a standard that is applied anymore. It seems to be the case, certainly. But that is a remark. And how dare you say individual liberties and free markets are part of your set of beliefs? And at the Washington Post, no, sir. The head of the editorial page, he heard that, and he's gone. He cleaned out his desk in 15 minutes, and he was gone. Just don't tell a government employee to clean out his desk in 15 minutes, because that really upsets them. That really makes them angry. But that's not even nearly my favorite story of the day. Turns out there are a lot of amazing stories. The Daily Caller has a wonderful story today that the Washington Post will never report. And it does have to do with free markets, I guess, and individual liberties, to the extent that Democrats, that is to say the left, they corrupt everything. Everything they touch turns to beep because of the people running. Now, the Daily Caller, with their headline, turns out top execs of org, that'd be an organization, we'd like to abbreviate everything because everything's shorthand, you know what I mean? Turns out top executives of org picked for billions by Biden EPA are big-time Democrat donors. Oh, I find that hard to believe. Isn't that just shocking? I can't. Wait a minute. They're funneling billions to Democrat Party donors, billions of taxpayer dollars for phony, baloney, environmental efforts that aren't really environmental efforts at all. That's hard to believe. Also, the Jew-hating left dressed up like Hamas at fancy New York City college. And they stormed the place yesterday, and they took over. They assaulted at least one person, and they terrorized the Jews again. And then they walked outside and called everybody else Nazis. No sense of irony. Honestly, what's with these people? They dress up like Hamas. They terrorize the Jews at college campuses in New York City, and then they call somebody else a Nazi? What is, they should be goose-stepping around, clicking their heels, wearing armbands. They're the left. You know, keep in mind, amazing stuff. The Nazi Party of Adolf Hitler, they were the National Socialist German Workers' Party. So they were a socialist workers' party in Germany. But pay no attention to that, because with the information dominance of the left, they've framed it out of view for them. Has nothing to do with them, Socialist Workers' Party. See Bernie Sanders. Never mind that. But let me get to this Daily Caller story, because this is quite remarkable. Top executives of a green organization, you know, the green organizations, you know what they call them in Europe, right? Watermelons. They call them watermelons because they're green on the outside, but they're red on the inside, kind of pink, like that cross-dresser who is going over the tranny that they just hired from Politico to go anchor show 7-figure salary for the tranny cross-dressing Democrat to go to MSDNC. I'll get to that one. It's kind of fun. I think they're all cross-dressers at this point, aren't they? Womp, womp, womp. So top executives of a green organization that the Biden Environmental Protection Agency selected to receive billions in public funds have collectively made hundreds of thousands of dollars in personal political donations to Democratic candidates and organizations in recent years, a Daily Caller News Foundation review of Federal Election Commission data found. It's interesting. The New York Times didn't conduct this investigation. Jeff Bezos, individual liberties and free markets. Washington Post did not investigate. The 60 Minutes does not have a story on the Democrats getting billions after contributing hundreds of thousands to the Democrats. There will be nothing on that from any of the fake mainstream media, which is why no one believes them. Keep them away from the children, too. They've got obsessive ideas about gender and children, down to, what was it, preschool, right? Kindergarten. They leave them alone. Stay away from the kids. So that's pretty amazing stuff. The Daily Caller News Foundation looked at it, and here's what they found. The Biden EPA chose the Coalition for Green Capital, which naturally they abbreviate as CGC. The Coalition for Green Capital was an awardee of $5 billion in taxpayer funds through the administration's massive Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which naturally they call the GGRF, because you have to abbreviate everything. The GGRF program in April of 2024. Hey, that's just last year. Reed Hundt, Hundt, Reed Hundt, the CGC's former CEO and chairman, has personally donated nearly $60,000 to Democratic candidates and aligned political organizations going back to 2013, while Richard Kaufman, the group's CEO, who replaced Hunt in January, has personally donated more than $600,000 to help Democrats since 2020, according to Federal Election Commission data. Isn't that amazing? And the Washington Post will see this, CNN will see this, and they're like, what? That's how it's supposed to work, isn't it? Isn't that normal? Because they're corrupt. They're corrupt as filthy, corrupt people can be. Amazing stuff. So in 2024, the EPA awarded the Coalition for Green Capital a $5 billion grant to create an NGO called Green Bank. Green Bank. Green on the outside, red on the inside. Outside congressional control. Congress has no control over it because they already authorized it in a slush fund that the Democrats set up under Joe Biden. Then they funneled that they laundered it, I should say, through the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and with a fake, usually they have, it's the Inflation Reduction Act, and we've got billions and billions. But that is completely ridiculous, of course, and it's money laundering, and this is how these Democrats all get their golden Mercedes station wagons and their beachfront houses and their Deep Creek lake houses and their private planes and everything else. And then they say, work for a nonprofit on the environment. And they're scamming, skimming, money laundering, the usual stuff. So they awarded $5 billion grant to an NGO, Green Bank, outside of congressional control. Reed Hundt, the group CEO, has some interesting tweets for a guy leading a nonpartisan group with $5 billion in taxpayer money. And it turns out that the guy naturally has a Twitter account, and it's full of left-wing crazy, which is what gets you in the door with the Democrats. And then they funnel billions of taxpayer dollars to you because criminality is normal. Corruption is normal in Washington, D.C., in government. You're talking trillions of dollars every year. Naturally, Willie Sutton, why do you rob banks? It's where the money is. And not anymore. Now it's in Washington. It's in the government. It's taxpayer money. And the Democrats learned that a long time ago. They also siphon off a lot of money from Ukraine and Russia and other places like that. But pretty amazing stuff. And the Daily Caller News Foundation doing the story, not, of course, the Washington Post, the New York Times, or 60 Minutes, or pretty amazing stuff, I must say. Really, really incredible people. The scam is amazing. And I talked about this guy yesterday because this was happening while we were on the air yesterday. A left-wing radical who's the president of the White House Correspondents Association and a left-wing extremist. He resigned yesterday from the Politico, where he worked on, I guess, the playbook and whatever they do there. You know, that the government pays millions of dollars for membership and for subscriptions so that great many government employees have access to Politico online. They wouldn't otherwise have access to Politico online unless they got it themselves, like normal people. But this guy from Politico, he announced that he was leaving, and Eugene Daniels is his name, and going to MSDNC, where they're going to pay him seven figures to host a panel show one day a week on weekends. And it turns out that this guy, Eugene Daniels, from that's right, Deep Creek Lake, that Eugene Daniels from Politico and now MSDNC, that they've got these articles about him that say he's an expert on Beyonce, and he has changed fashion in Washington, D.C. That's what they say, he's changed fashion in Washington, D.C. That is their way of saying that he's a tranny. And I don't know if he steals women's luggage from airports like so many other Democrats do. But this guy is a tranny, a transgender, transvestite from Transylvania who dresses like a Hollywood Boulevard stripper and sprawls out in the streets with his pumps and his nylons and his black skirt and his bra and his beard and the fan, what do you call those fans that the ladies used, in Gone with the Wind? He's got one of those things, squatting in the middle of a street at what appears to be a transgender march or something. So the guy's a huge tranny, and that actually is probably why they decided to hire him at MSNBC. This would not score against him. This is big-time plus for him. MSNBC's newest anchor, Eugene Daniels, is a Kamala Harris expert. That's in quotation marks, from the Washington Free Beacon. They're on the side of the Angels. And MSNBC's newest anchor, Eugene Daniels, is a, quote, Kamala Harris expert, end quote, and a, quote, walking Beyonce encyclopedia, end quote, who has revolutionized the D.C. fashion scene. Revolutionized the D.C. fashion scene. And here he is, sprawled down in the street, dressed like a Hollywood Boulevard hooker, and with a beard and one of those fans, like Aunt Pitty Pat had in Gone with the Wind. I'm absolutely, and there he is, sprawled in the street, dressed like a hooker, and now he's the new, and here he is dressed like a lady roller skater from a roller derby or something like that. And he likes to dress like a lady, and even here he's got ladies' tennis clothes on, and he has that fan over here, too, that hand fan. Honestly, he dresses like your Aunt Ruth over here, maybe stealing luggage from airport carousels, squatting all over the place, a lot of squatting going on. And that's your media. They're pretty amazing. Amazing people. Yes, they are. So I've got that for you. And I got the Supreme Court Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, pauses order by a Biden judge to stop. It's about $2 billion in foreign aid, USAID and stuff. And the Supreme Court had to intervene because an Obama-Biden judge, this guy was actually a Biden judge, interfered with the proper function of our republic once again. Remarkable stuff. But President Trump, a lot of things happened at President Trump's first cabinet meeting of his second term yesterday. And a lot of fun stuff from that, I'm telling you. Also, the House of Representatives narrowly passed the Republicans' big, beautiful bill for Trump's agenda. The Washington Post is very angry about it. They might have to cross-dress just to come to terms with all this. We're, of course, at 888-630-9625. And President Trump terminates Biden-era oil deal with Venezuela because the Democrats always love to line the pockets of communists and Islamists from Tehran to Caracas. Caracas. You have to say that with an accent. Tehran. Amazing stuff. And the Democrats are angry because they were enriching Nicolas Maduro and the ongoing late Hugo Chavez regime. The Democrats are not on our side. God, they're amazing. Tulsi Gabbard fired more than 100 intelligence officers over a message in a chat tool. Have you seen what these guys are saying in the chat tool? They might be cross-dressing, too, based on the things they're saying. Pretty amazing stuff. Group of pro-Palestinian leftist protesters staged a takeover at Barnard College to protest radical Islamic jihadis being expelled by the school. They love jihad, and boy, a lot more of that. And in Maine, a woman stood up for women and girls, a member of the House of Delegates, and the Democrats have canceled her. They've stripped her of her right to vote and her right to free speech because they're effectively communists from hell. And wait till you hear this stuff. Maine legislature censures representative for calling out trans athlete. The Democrats are very, very unwell. If you vote for them, there's something wrong with you. Also, a Democrat mayor in New York, Mayor Adams, defends Negroes' comment, says it was targeted at those calling on him to resign, which makes it okay then. That makes it all right because, they were the Negroes who wanted him to resign, and Mayor Eric Adams, he had a thing or two to say about that. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. All right, I'm going to speed things up today because too much stuff. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Iris, calling from Manassas, Virginia. Iris, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm just great.
Listen,
Huh?
I think that we should give this MSDNC guy a break. I mean, can any guy becoming a Kamala Harris expert not turn trans?
That is an interesting observation on your part.
I think that we could get some Doge money, and Chuck Norris would probably also suffer the same fate if he became a Kamala Harris expert. So.
And Beyonce, he's a Beyonce expert and a Kamala Harris expert, and he dresses in their clothing or clothing very much like their clothing. Now he was a senior. He's the president of the White House Correspondents Association. Yeah.
I mean, I think it comes with getting into that woman's brain.
Honestly, there's a lot of mental illness in the country, isn't there, Iris?
Absolutely.
And what do we call those men?
We can turn things around soon.
We're hoping we can turn things around. We got to call them on it every day, every hour, because
Absolutely.
The fire hose of crazy is never ending, and we must stand firm and call them out on this lunacy. Iris, wait till you hear what the Democrats have done in Maine to this woman, a Republican woman in the statehouse. This is lunacy. The Democrat Party. What is the cross-dressing Beyonce encyclopedia from Politico? This is our Washington press corps. Now, leaving Politico and White House Correspondents Association, the president of the White House Correspondents Association, going to take a cross-dressing anchor job at MSDNC. He's a black guy, and I hadn't mentioned that yet, had I? Just crazy. So they got a two for right there. They got a black guy who's a tranny cross-dresser at MSDNC, and they're like, oh, bravo. They couldn't hire him if he was just a straight and normal guy because, Democrat Party. They're very, very unwell indeed. There is a story out of Maine that I want to share with you that I think is whack-a-doodle-doo because the Democrats are very fascistic. They're very fascistic. They don't like normal. They're very much against normal. And there is a normal woman who's a Republican delegate in the state of Maine, House of Delegates, and she stood up for young women playing in sports. And she was smashed and shut down by the Democrats, who then voted to have her censured, and that means she will not be allowed to speak on the floor of the House of Delegates anymore. She won't be able to vote as a member of the House of Delegates until she grovels and snivels to the cross-dressing mental cases that are the Democrat Party. Oh, I haven't even mentioned that Gene Hackman also, his body found in his home. The actor, 95 years old. The actor Gene Hackman died, and his wife and his dog. That's right, Gene Hackman and his wife and his dog. Gene Hackman, 95 years old, found dead at home. And I want to get into that a little bit because I've got, in a little while, because I've got a story about that. When I was living in California, Gene Hackman flipped me off one time. Driving in automobiles in Montecito, California. And Gene Hackman flipped me off, me and a friend of mine visiting from Chicago, and flipped us off. We're like, hey, and my friend is like, I'll tell the story later. It's more fun if I tell the story straight through. But Gene Hackman passed away, a fun actor, Academy Award winner, I think twice Academy Award winner, and he's a lot of fun. But we'll get to that. And Democrat Mayor Eric Adams in New York using the word Negroes to describe the people that are not supporting him because, Democrats, they're kind of funny when it comes to everything, I think. History, clothing, stealing women's luggage from luggage carousels and airports across the country and all kinds of stuff. But I want to get to this story because this is a wild story. And actually, we did this story on my Newsmax TV show last night. Chris Plant and the Right Squad, 10 p.m. Eastern time. And this was a fun topic that we did last night. It's fun in its own way. It's demented because the Democrat Party has a lot of mental issues, but and it comes to gender again, like the cross-dressing, tranny, Politico, president of the White House Correspondents Association, now MSNBC anchor. That makes you an NBC anchor, and he's a cross-dressing lunatic doing the splits out in the middle of streets, dressed like Los Angeles street prostitute, cheerleader, kind of the cheerleader prostitute, the Democrats. But let me go to this other story out of Maine, which is also about Democrats cross-dressing and tranny and children and the sexualization of children because the Democrat Party is very unwell. But there is a Republican state representative named Laurel Libby. A lot of L's in Laurel Libby. But Laurel Libby, a Republican delegate in the state of Maine, the beautiful state of Maine, and she has a Twitter account that hasn't been canceled. The Maine Democrat majority, she wrote, has just moved to censure me to punish her for speaking out against their failure to protect Maine girls and keep biological males out of girls' sports. You may remember that the governor of the state of Maine was at the White House with President Trump the other day. She's a Democrat. And we had this, and I told you about the story, and we did the story on my TV show last week also. The state championship for track and field was about a week and a half ago, I guess. And the Democrats invited a young man to compete as a young woman in the competition. Is pole vaulting, perhaps ironically. This man is, now he pole vaulted last year as a young man, and he came in fifth in the state. And this year, he competed as a woman, and he came in first place. And he got all the trophies and the medals, and he went home the big winner, even though he's a dude competing against young women. And I commented on this last week because the Democrat Party is mentally ill and sexually deranged. And this young man cheated like an East German and competed as a man in the pole, as a woman rather, in the pole vaulting competition. And naturally, he won. And all of the young women were shattered by this. And they're like, well, we knew we were going to lose the moment we saw him show up. We saw him competing last year, and he competed, because he's a young man, even though he came in fifth last year among the young men, his the height that he pole vaulted at was much greater than any of the women could pole vault to, and they knew that going in, right? So they saw a dude show up, and he doesn't look like a lady, and they said, well, now we're scrod, aren't we? Which is a type of fish, and they lost, and he won. And now a young woman, this woman, Laurel Libby, Representative Laurel Libby, of Republican of the state of Maine, she went to the floor of the House of Delegates, and she tried to make a case for keeping men out of women's sports, and the Democrats were having none of it. Now, again, the governor, what's the governor's name again? The Maine governor, because she got a pushback from President Trump the other day when she was at the White House for the Governors Association meeting. Janet Mills is the Democrat governor, and President Trump signed an executive order days into office this time around saying that if you allow, as a state, like the state of Maine, if you allow men to compete in women's sports, then you are in violation of Title IX, which was a law passed decades ago to protect women in sports, women and girls in sports. And the Democrats said, well, we're going to start being transgender cheaters, and we're going to steal trophies from girls and women. And President Trump said, no more violating Title IX. And then last week, they had the statewide track and field competition. A young man won the women's competition in pole vaulting, absurdly. And President Trump was talking to the governors at the White House, and he said, oh, yeah, and then they had this, and it sounded like this.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well,
not here.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
Well, we are the federal law. So you better comply, because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one.
I'll see you in court, said the arrogant twit. And I'll see you in court because I'm going to protect the rights of men to steal women's trophies and steal high school competitions, track and field, and everything else. And maybe they'll get some of those volleyballs bashing girls' faces in and all that good stuff, right? So now they had the competition last week, and dude won the whole thing. And then this a normal woman, we have Remember Normal T-shirts and coffee mugs at the Chris Plant store. Representative Laurel Libby went to the floor of the statehouse, House of Delegates, and she was interrupted, shouted down, and then by the Democrats there because they have the majority. And it sounded kind of like this.
The state championship was a public event.
Laurel Libby.
The individual in question determined of his own free will to participate, and his photos are posted publicly on multiple websites. The reason that folks are upset about this post is that it exposed truth, and now people are mad that indeed, after being told that this is not happening and it doesn't matter, that there are boys participating in girls' sports. Boys taking the place of girls.
Point of order. Now these left-wing radicals start stepping on her and interrupting her because they're all trannies, I think, or they want children to be sexual deviants because I think they're sexual deviants and they're obsessed with children sexually. Newsweek magazine 7 days ago, transgender athletes win in Maine. Sparks backlash. Transgender athletes win in Maine, sparks backlash. Not at Newsweek magazine, mind you, but never mind that. The competition held on Monday saw a transgender athlete from Cumberland win the Class B state championship in pole vaulting with a jump of 10 feet 6 inches. And Newsweek magazine says her victory, meaning his, because at Newsweek magazine, they're unfamiliar with biology and science and medicine and the fundamentals of culture for tens of thousands of years, but never mind that. Her victory, meaning his victory, helped the school secure the overall girls' team title by just 1 point. So they cheated. They all cheated. The inclusion of transgender athletes in women's sports has drawn increased criticism from conservative groups, but not liberal groups or middle-of-the-road groups, just conservative groups, because we're trying to hold on to civilization here. And the left, they're here to undo civilization, who argue it creates an unfair competitive advantage and raises safety concerns, just based on several years of quite clear evidence supporting that entirely. The issue has become a key talking point in Donald Trump's reelection campaign. His reelection campaign, really, because this is kind of an interesting story, I've got to say. This is February 21st of 2025. Is he in a reelection campaign? Because I don't think he can run again, but in his reelection campaign, this is Newsweek magazine. They really don't have much in the way of journalistic chops, I've got to say. Earlier in the month, President Trump fulfilled a campaign promise by signing an executive order banning transgender athletes from competing in girls' and women's sports. That's called cheating. They're trying to stop cheating. The order allows federal agencies to withhold funding from organizations that do not comply with Title IX. That's Title IX. Title IX for Democrats listening along. That's Roman numerals. I like to think about the Roman Empire every day because of all it's done for the modern world. As interpreted by the Trump administration, comply with Title IX as interpreted by the Trump administration, which defines sex as the gender assigned at birth. Yeah, that's not only the Trump administration, that's science and biology and genetics. And thankfully, you live in a world where we of the patriarchy have cracked the genetic code. So we figured all this stuff out a long time ago. You guys have mental issues, and we're not going to bow to your mental issues. We're going to point out that you have mental issues, and then we're going to go back to being normal people. Pretty amazing stuff. So the athletes' victory played a decisive role in helping the school clinch the overall girls' state championship by a single point. That means they cheated, and they shouldn't have the state championship. And that's stealing and cheating and lying and all that. Pretty amazing stuff. Now, it continued on the floor of the state legislature where the Democrats refused to allow Laurel Libby to speak.
Ignoring the will of the Maine people.
The member will defer.
Whether it was the handling of COVID, passing a late-term abortion bill,
the member will defer.
The outcome was already predetermined by natural biological advantages.
The member will defer.
The canceling of girls' sports.
The member will defer.
Boys participating in girls' sports is
canceling
not
of science.
fair.
Not fair. They don't care.
When you shine a spotlight on the truth, you can expect opposition. Mr. Speaker, may I finish? Maine girls will not get fairness in Maine. And when the woke left can't silence women, they cancel them.
The representative will defer.
The representative will defer. They're talking over there, shouting down. They use women to shout down the other woman. And then, you know what they did? They censured her, and they've stripped her of her right to vote as an elected delegate and of her right to speak. So the fascist Nazi commie pigs have stripped her of her rights. And they've stripped a woman of her rights because she stood up for women's rights. Keeping in mind that this is something they don't teach in school at all. I don't think they ever did. I was going to say anymore, but I don't think they ever did. And that is that the Democrat Party prevented women from getting the vote. They prevented the 19th Amendment from becoming law for decades by tripping up the process in Washington. And then when it passed in Washington, went to the states to be ratified by the states. They went state by state and tried to prevent women from getting the vote. The Democrat Party is not the party of women any more than they're the party of black people. They're the party of slavery and the bullwhip and Robert Mapplethorpe, and they're the party of stripping women of the right to vote. And that's not all. They're the party of Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein. And we should be getting Jeffrey Epstein names today of some kind, maybe not everything, but it may happen while we're on the air. But back to this Republican delegate representative in Maine, Laurel Libby. Maine legislature, Democrats, censures Representative Laurel Libby for pointing out trans athlete who won girls' competition. They're demanding that she apologize. Otherwise, they're going to continue to strip her of her rights like the fascists that they are. So the Democrat-dominated Maine House Representatives censured Representative Laurel Libby, a Republican, because on social media posts, she put up photos of the competition. Like, oh, you can't do that. They're anti-free speech, they're anti-woman, they're anti-black, they're anti-capitalist, they're anti-individual liberties. At the Washington Post, they'll resign if you stand up for individual liberties and for free markets. The Democrat Party today.
When the woke left can't silence women, they cancel them.
All right, now, Republican Maine State Representative Laurel Libby trying to stand up for women and being shouted down by the Democrats, then being censured, then being silenced. They've stripped her of her right to vote as an elected member of the House of Delegates, and they've stripped her of her right to free speech, not allowing her to speak on the floor as an elected official because she, as a woman, knowing what a woman is, unlike Ketanji Brown Jackson, standing up for girls in sports, and she did an interview with Fox.
Last night, I was silenced by the Maine Democrat majority. I was officially censured for sharing a post that made clear that Maine is allowing biologically male athletes to participate in girls' sports, silencing girls. And so last night, I was silenced by a man, the Speaker of the House and the Democrat majority, for speaking up for Maine girls. That's where we are.
That's where we are, for speaking up for girls. If you're a woman and you stand up for girls, then men that call themselves liberals and Democrats will shut you down.
I will not apologize for speaking the truth and for speaking up for Maine girls. I am exploring options at this point because I do not believe that this censuring is constitutional. And so there will be more to come as we explore those options.
There will be more to come as we... Now, the Democrats have muzzled her, stripped her of her right to vote in the statehouse as a representative, and they're demanding that she apologize, and then they'll restore her rights. Apologize for telling the truth, for being correct. They're just amazing, aren't they? That's your Democrat Party. They've got very major psychological issues, mental issues, sexual issues, scientific issues. They're unwell, and they've made all of this normal. I'm making quotation marks with my fingers.